All right, so welcome everyone to our SNAP Cooking 5 Ways series. This material was funded by USDA's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, in cooperation with Maryland's Department of Human Services and University of Maryland Extension. They are an equal opportunity provider. Today, our featured session is our Thanksgiving recipes. Razan Sahuri is in her kitchen, and we want to welcome her into your homes today via Zoom. Razan Sahuri works at the University of Maryland Extension and is Howard County, Maryland's SNAP Ed nutrition educator. Razan holds a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics and a master's degree in public health. Through her work with the University of Maryland Extension, Razan partners with Howard County Public School System, Head Start Centers, and the Howard County Food Bank to deliver nutrition education to students, parents, and teachers. These collaborations also involve leveraging resources between Maryland SNAP Ed and local community agencies to facilitate greater access to and availability of healthy food options and influence the adoption of policy, systems, and physical environment changes related to a healthier lifestyle. So we are once again here and we are ready to get some great recipes for this holiday.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And tell me if you see this. Let's see. All right. So welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving with a twist. We're trying to make it a little bit healthier. That does not mean that it's not going to be tasty. With that, let's dig into our session today. It's going to be a little bit meaty. Excuse the pun, but let's walk through our agenda. So for today, first of all, we're going to talk about turkey safety and handling. And then we're going to talk about some healthier alternatives to common Thanksgiving foods. We're also going to dig into leftovers, and I'm going to show you a recipe to do with your leftover turkey. And then we're going to mention some ideas on how to be physically active during the holiday. And we're going to wrap it up with 2 cooking demonstrations. And of course, we have Q&As, but those are open to you at any point. So please feel free to either unmute yourselves, ask your question, or just type it in the chat. So when we talk about turkey safety and handling, before we dig into that, when we're trying to plan our Thanksgiving meal, try and plan for about 1 pound of turkey per person. And why is this important? This is important for us to know the size of the bird, the size of the turkey, and then once we know the size of the turkey, that determines how we handle it as well. So if we want safe thawing, safe handling, we need to know the size. So basically, before you go ahead and buy your turkey, just know how many people you have, and that's how you'll know the size of the turkey. And usually when we go out to buy turkey, there's 2 types. There's the fresh turkeys, and then there's frozen. The fresh turkeys, usually when we go and buy them, they should not be bought more than 1 to 2 days prior. So that's it. Within 1 to 2 days, you keep it in the refrigerator. When you keep it in the refrigerator, make sure that it's still wrapped. Don't remove the wrap. Put it in a tray or a pan and try to put it in the lowest place that you can put it in your refrigerator. You don't want any of the drippings to fall on something else. And then, once you're ready to cook it, you'll take it out within those 1 to 2 days. It's already ready and you can cook it. Never, ever buy a fresh turkey that is pre-stuffed. A lot of times, you might find a turkey with stuffing inside. That's a big no-no, because harmful bacteria it lives inside the stuffing, and it's a food borne illness waiting to happen. So try and never buy stuffing inside your fresh turkey. And always, we're going to talk again later on about what to do with the stuffing and where to place it. The second type, as I mentioned, is the frozen type. And usually we keep it in the freezer until we're ready to thaw it. And as you know, with frozen turkey, it needs a couple of days, if not more, to thaw it. And turkey can be kept frozen in a freezer for a long time. And usually it's you can use it within a year for the best quality. So if you find turkey on sale, let's say in June, you can buy it because it will be safe to use during the holidays. When we thaw our turkey, there's 3 different ways you can actually safely thaw your turkey. The first one is you can thaw it in the refrigerator. The second is using cold water. And the third is using your microwave. And I'm going to dig into more details for each one. So usually when we thaw in the fridge, allow 24 hours for every 4 to 5 pounds of fresh turkey. And that's why, it's important to know the size of the turkey to know how much time it needs to safely thaw. So basically a 12 to 20 pound turkey will take 3 to 4 days to thaw. And when you put it in the fridge, as I mentioned before, you keep it in its wrapping. You don't remove it. You keep it you keep a large tray under it, and you just sometimes it leaks. So this might collect the juice. The second way to do it is to use the fresh water. Usually you allow 30 minutes per pound of turkey if you're thawing in running water. So you put your turkey in water, but you keep it wrapped. You do not unwrap it. And then you change that water every 30 minutes for every pound. So usually if you're in a hurry, that's a quicker way to do it. If you forget to thaw your turkey on time, that might be something where you can do it. You submerge your wrapped turkey in cold water and change the water every 30 minutes. And every 30 minutes, you allocate 30 minutes per pound. As for the microwave, you have to use your owner's manual because every microwave is different. And that's the only time you unwrap your turkey and you put it in a microwave safe container because it will drip, and then you can thaw it. Once it's thawed, disregard which method, you have to cook it right away. Because, the longer it stays thawed, the more likely some bacteria will start to grow. So now we have our turkey, it's thawed, we need to prepare it. So people prepare turkeys differently, but one of the things that are very important is to never, ever wash your turkey. And that applies for your chicken as well. We never wash our poultry. Despite popular belief that washing raw poultry, it will cause more bacteria to spread around your kitchen, no matter how well you clean. So even if you say, I'm going to put it in the sink, for example, and then I'm going to disinfect my sink. Yes, you might disinfect your sink and it might work, but then one drop might fall somewhere outside your sink, and that would cause problems. So once you marinate your turkey, you add whatever you like to add to it. Now it's time to cook it. And one of the easiest things to do is to actually roast it. You turn your oven to 325 and you put your turkey on a rack in a shallow pan, and you just cook it, and you cook the stuffing next to it. You don't add the stuffing to the turkey, although that's what we usually do. But the thing is, the turkey needs certain temperature for it to be fully cooked, and the stuffing requires a completely different temperature. So we need them both to be fully cooked. Usually you can use a thermometer to know if your turkey is cooked, and you have to insert it in the thickest part of the breast. So usually, for example, I have, a regular thermometer, or you can use the digital one. It does not matter as long as you can measure. And once it reaches 165, that's when you know that your turkey is done. Even if you have the turkey with the pop-up, you know how sometimes turkeys that we buy from stores, they have the pop-up thermometer, also measure, because sometimes they're not 100% accurate. And then once it reaches that 165, you take it out, you let it rest for 20 minutes. When you leave it to rest, the juices will kind of settle, and that would be easier for you to carve it. Sorry, that was the longest slide. So now we're going to move much quicker. So when we talk about, when we think of Thanksgiving recipes, usually we think of the turkey. That's like the star of the show. But also there are a lot of side dishes that are also great. So, and they can help us eat all of the foods from all of the food groups. So we don't want to just, overload on protein. We want to have more vegetables, more fruit, more all the healthy, food groups in our diet. So one of the things that it's very important for us to always consider is vegetables. And in Thanksgiving, a lot of times we use vegetables as a vessel for more fat or more protein, but it doesn't have to be this way. You can have your bird, your turkey, and then you can just have your vegetables cooked in a light way. This way you'll get all your vitamins, minerals, and fibers. So, you can think of green beans, Brussels sprouts, or any fall vegetable would be a great option. And today I'm going to show you a roasted vegetables with maple glaze. It's really good. It's super easy. And that's something you can use. It doesn't have to be only for Thanksgiving. I know, sometimes we have some traditional dishes that we'd like to have, but then you can also experiment with some lighter versions of things. The second one is potatoes, and especially sweet potatoes. So sweet potatoes are a great addition to a Thanksgiving table. So you can prepare them from scratch as a healthier alternative to canned yams, because a lot of times people use canned yams and they're full of sugar. Or you can just mash them instead of your regular mashed potatoes. And then we have the stuffing. You're going to go home today with a very easy recipe that uses the slow cooker. So, to make things easier, all of these you will be receiving a lot of recipes for. So, you can have a lighter Thanksgiving if you choose to. And the same thing applies for gravy. Gravy, it can be the drippings of the turkey. It can be just something to make things a little bit more moist. And you can absolutely use that. And then cranberries, instead of, using your typical cranberry sauce where it's full of sugar, you can make something like a cranberry chutney, for example, and you will receive the recipe for that. It's super easy, it's tasty. And then finally, we have desserts. And again, with desserts, it does not have to be tasteless if we make it a little bit healthier. What we can do, we can reduce the amount of fat or the amount of sugar. You're going to receive an easy recipe for pumpkin pie. And then try and think of fruit as a nice ending to your meal as well. So, have some oranges or whatever you have, apples next to your fruit. Maybe someone would like a lighter option.
Razan, we have a question in the chat.
Yes.
Maureen is asking about not washing poultry. Does this mean not running water over it or inside the turkey or the chicken?
Yes, we're not supposed to wash turkey from the inside or the outside. So when you get your turkey, if it's wet, you can pat dry it with a tissue, and then you can add your herbs, your lemon, your whatever you want to add to it, but do not wash it under running water. And if you put it under running water to thaw it, it has to be sealed. I hope that answered your question. So, and we can come back to it. Let's talk about leftovers. So one of the very important things that we need to talk about is food safety when it comes to leftovers. So the first thing is, a lot of times families, they have this wonderful spread. They keep it on the table for family members to go back and forth and eat throughout the day. This might not be a great idea for so many reasons. So the first thing is, cooked food needs to be in the refrigerator within 2 hours of cooking. If you leave it outside, the longer you leave it, the more microbes, the more bacteria would grow. So you can keep it inside, and then if somebody wants seconds or they're hungry, they can take it out and heat it. That would be a healthier way to do things. And then cooked turkey, a lot of times we make a turkey that's bigger than we need, so we end up with leftover turkey meat. It's good in the fridge for up to 3 to 4 days. If you feel that you're not going to use it within 3 to 4 days, you can put it in your freezer. And we are going to put in the chat the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service page. It has helpful information. It walks you through healthy preparations and food safety for your turkeys, what we talked about. And then it talks about how to handle leftover turkey. And then the nice thing about leftover turkey is every family has its own recipes, its own creations. In my family, usually we used to make sandwiches, but there are other ways. So one of the things to make it a little bit healthier and add more vegetables is, for example, make a soup. And today I'm going to show you a very easy, simple soup. So you can add more veggies to it. You can make it and then you can freeze the rest. So let's say you have a lot of turkey and you don't know what to do with it. You can make a big pot and then you can freeze the rest. You can stuff any kind of vegetable that can be stuffed. So you can get your stuffing, if you have leftover stuffing, with your turkey. If you don't have stuffing, you can stuff it with rice, with quinoa, with pasta, whatever it is. And then you can stuff bell pepper, acorn squash. I don't know if anybody has other ideas, maybe pumpkin. And this way you're also having more vegetables. And then you can make a salad since it's already cooked. I know one time we made chicken Waldorf salad together, and you're going to receive that recipe again. But instead of chicken, you can just substitute with turkey. And then for our final slide, now we've had our feast, we're ready to burn off some excess calories, because a lot of times, we end up eating so much, and that's fine. It's one day. It's not like, we're doing this every day. But since the family is gathered, you can also take that as an opportunity to spend some quality time doing some activity. So what if some of the things that you can actually do together as a family is just go on a walk or a hike. You can hike if you have something close by, or you can drive to hike if you're up for it, or you can just walk in your neighborhood. You can walk through a corn maze if there's something close by and you'd like to do that, just to change sceneries. You can jump through leaves, especially if you have little ones. That's something they would enjoy. You can take a bike ride if if bikes are available for the family. You can play flag football, which is very similar to tag football. It's the same concept. Or you can have a scavenger hunt. And then, towards the end, you can have a prize or something. With that, we're done with our lesson part. And now we're moving to the demo part. If you have any questions, please let me know while I prepare for that. I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Can you? Let's see. All right. So we're going to make 2 recipes, and I'm going to open my recipes. They're super easy, super simple. The first one, but I need to turn for the soup just to make things quicker. So the first one we're going to make is the roasted root vegetables with the maple glaze. And this works with any root vegetables that you have. So I'm going to use beets and carrots, but if you have turnips, if you have parsnip, it works. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring the dish that you're going to bake with. And the nice thing is, if you have a nice dish, you can serve it in this one. You're going to spray it with some oil. And if you don't have oil to spray, you can just dab a little bit of oil and then, just spread it. So you need 3 carrots, washed, peeled, and sliced. You just dump them in here. You need 3 beets, washed, peeled, and cubed. So the ratio is basically 1-to-1 between beets and carrots. Okay. You can mix them if you like. I think it needs a bigger dish. So for that, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. And then 1/4 teaspoon salt. Oops. So the recipe asks for you to mix it in a separate bowl and then put it in a baking dish, but I'm just trying to save us some washing here. And if you have a big enough baking dish, you can do that. And then half a teaspoon of black pepper. So you're going to mix all of that very well. You can use your hands or gloves because beets, as you know, stain. And then you're going to put this in a preheated oven, 450 for 20 minutes. That's the first step. So let's pretend we're putting this in the oven.
And Razan, what if you don't like beets? What are some other options for us?
So you can use carrots, parsnips, turnips, any root vegetable works. Although sweet potatoes are not root vegetables, they also work. So after 20 minutes, this is how it's going to look like. And you can see there's still some juice in it. You are going to add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup to it. So since this is half the quantity, I'm just going to add 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And if you don't have maple syrup, no problem, you can add honey. It's just for that glaze, that sweetness. You're going to mix it and then stick it in the oven for 20 minutes more. Oops. So as you can see, there's still some juice in it. You see? So you put it in the oven for 20 more. And once it's done, you'll get this. As you can see, they look very similar, but it's a little bit drier. And it's very easy. You can serve this as a side dish. It works very nicely as a side dish. I also like to add it to salads. So this is our first recipe, which is the roasted vegetables with maple glaze. Our second recipe, which is going to take a tiny bit longer time, it's for our leftovers. So let's say you have leftover turkey. It's a turkey rice soup. And what I did, the recipe that you're going to receive is for 10 people. I divided it into 2 halves, so for 5 each. I prepared 1 in advance, like half of the batch in advance, and I'm going to prepare the other batch with you right now. Any questions so far? Okay, so I just heated my pot. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of oil. Make sure it's warm. For that, I'm going to add half an onion. The recipe asks for 1 onion, but since I put half of it. So you add your onion. And with your onion, we're going to add 1.5 cloves of garlic. And if you like more garlic, you can absolutely do that. So usually when you do this part, you are going to saute it for 5 minutes. But since we don't have 5 minutes, that's why I wanted to, prepare things ahead of time. This way you see the end result. So after 5 minutes, you're going to add your 3 carrots. In this case, it's 1.5 carrots. Celery. Also 3 stalks of celery chopped. And you're going to add your leftover turkey. It's 3 cups of chopped turkey. In this case, it's 1.5. So that's your, leftover turkey. It's already cooked. So you're going to saute that, and then you're going to add to it your chicken stock or your turkey stock. So the recipe asks for 5 cups, which is 2.5 right now for us over here. You're going to turn the heat up and let it boil. Once it boils, it will take some time, so we don't have that much time. So once it boils, you're going to add 3/4 of a cup brown rice. I already used half of it. So the broth is going to cook the rice. So once you cook the rice, you lower the temperature, you close it and you simmer for 20 minutes. Once the rice is cooked, you are going to add a cup of mushrooms, or half cup of mushrooms in this case. Okay. And you're going to add 2 cups of broccoli. If you don't have broccoli or your family doesn't like broccoli, you can use any other vegetables you have. So I'm using frozen kale that I had at home. It thawed. Or you can use broccoli and kale. You can use spinach, chard. You can use any greens. And you cook it for 5 to 10 minutes more. With that, it's done. So I'm going to close this, try and cook it for real now, and show you how it looks like. So I've made the other batch as I told you. So this is how it looks like once it's done. Let me grab my ladle. And it's super filling since you have, your protein, your rice. I don't know if you can see it. So this is how it will look like once it's cooked. Any questions so far?
No questions, but that looks delicious.
It smells great too. So I'm going to turn this off and remove the spotlight. So that's something that's very easy to make. You can always, make it in a bigger quantity, the soup, and put it in small, freezer bags. And then once you need it, all you have to do is take one, put it in the fridge, thaw it, and then you can heat it. It's super easy. Since the turkey is already cooked, everything else, it's fine. It's not going to take a long time. All right, any questions, comments? You're going to receive a list of recipes. So from, dishes that you can make during Thanksgiving, and then a couple of recipes for leftovers and what to do with leftovers. And try, I know everybody has their own traditions, their own menus, but also try always to incorporate some vegetables if you can. Not vegetables as vessels for fat, just vegetables without cream or, a lot of fat. And then try and be a little bit more physically active during that time. This way, it can balance things out.
I did have a comment about the when you're we were joking about when you were adding the garlic to the soup in the beginning. We were in the camp that adds like 3 to 4 times the amount of garlic that requires. That would be, would that alter the recipe, do you think, or would it make it a little bit healthier?
It would not alter the recipe. Our recipes are super forgiving, and there's room for you to, be as creative as you like. If you like it more garlicky, by all means, you can add more garlic. If you like it spicy, you can add, some chili peppers to it. You can add any of these things. It won't alter the flavor. When I tasted the soup earlier, it tastes like the broth, to be honest. The majority of the flavor comes from the broth. So make sure you have a broth that you like. You can add to it any of, the things you enjoy in terms of herbs and things like that, just to make it taste the way you like. And that would work. But, when I tasted it, it was the majority, as I said, it tasted like the broth. So you can add more things depending on what you enjoy. But all the recipes are super forgiving. You can swap things if like maple syrup. If you don't have maple syrup, you can use honey. If you don't like beets, you don't have to use them. You can also just make it with carrots. You don't have to go out of your way to buy turnips, for example. If you find yourself in a CSA with turnips and you don't know what to do with it, that's a good way to do it. But if you just have carrots, you can make it with carrots. The same thing with the soup. You don't have to add all of the veggies. You can pick and choose. And as you saw, I used some frozen, some fresh. You can just, whatever is available, you can make it work. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. With that, I think we are done. Next
right.
time we are doing things differently. We're going to do it the first Tuesday of the month, not the second. And it's the 7th. Is that correct? 7th of December. I see Piali nodding. So, and we're going to talk about vegetables and what's in season during winter. I know early December is still not winter, but within a couple of weeks it'll be winter. So just for us to prepare. And with that, we'll be done with our fall series.
All right. Well, we're about to stop the recording. Thank you again, Razan, for welcoming us to your kitchen. I know we were talking amongst ourselves that we are going to be making some of those recipes, and we'll definitely send you the pictures if we do.
Anybody,
in
sorry to
the-
interrupt you, but
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see pictures or comments from participants. You have my email in the recipe in the sheet you receive, so please feel free to